This is New Hampshire Today. I am Chris Ryan. This hour of the show brought to you by Manchester Boston Regional Airport. And excited to have with us right now former candidate for President of the United States. We remember very fondly here in the Granite State, and the current Secretary of Transportation. He is Pete Buttigieg. Good morning, Mayor Buttigieg.
Good morning. Nice to be with you again.
You will always be Mayor Pete, no matter what status you get. So
I'll always answer to that.
The mayor title will stick with Secretary Buttigieg. So let's start with this. You were up in Berlin touting some aspects of the bipartisan infrastructure bill, looking specifically at a federal raise grant, which is given to Berlin. Tell us a little bit about what this is going to do and what programs like this will do in regard to building an economy for the future.
That's right. We've been traveling the country. This is the sixth and final state on the tour we've been taking this week to look at some of the places where we are making investments through the funding in this infrastructure law. And some of the projects that won this competitive process that we were able to say yes and fund are ones that bring together a number of benefits at the same time. This project in Berlin is a great example. They're going to be making the streets in their downtown safer. They're going to make it easier to navigate, improve what it's like to be a pedestrian, which is going to benefit small business. And in what I think is a great New England tradition of being frugal and smart, they're going to take energy that is coming out of the nearby biomass plant that used to just go off into the air, actually capture that energy, capture that heat, and use that to help manage the snow and ice that is having a real impact on the ability of the downtown to succeed in the wintertime. And that's going to help the city save on their municipal budget for snow removal. So really a great example of a win-win-win project. It's good for the economy, it's good for safety, and it's good for the climate. And those are the kinds of things we can do when we are able to fund good local transportation projects, thanks to the money that's in that infrastructure bill.
So 2 appearances in New Hampshire within a month for you. Will be doing a Democratic fundraiser in September. Obviously, First Nation primary status is up in the air, given what the DNC is going to do, but that leads to some tongues wagging. What is your assessment of what Joe Biden has done as president, and is there any chance that you would run in 24?
Well, look, I can't talk about the campaign side of things while I'm here doing my day job. But what I will say is this, and this is why I'm so proud to be part of this administration and to support this president, is the president's got a lot to be proud of right now. You know, we're coming off a real streak in Washington where the Inflation Reduction Act got passed. That's going to lower prescription drugs prices, lower energy costs, which I know is a big deal here in New England, and help lower the federal deficit. That's in addition to the PACT Act, finally doing the right thing for veterans, like some of the folks I served with who were exposed to burn pits in Afghanistan and Iraq, getting that CHIPS Act done that is going to help us make more manufactured products right here in America, and, of course, the historic infrastructure bill that's giving us the funding that I'm celebrating this week. Look, I've always believed that good policy is good politics. We're out here right now to celebrate good policy, and I think that's something that states, you know, whether they're so-called red, blue, or purple, can all celebrate, and that's one of the things I've seen. You know, we've been in states these last few days, from Florida to Nevada to Ohio to Oklahoma to New Hampshire, very, very different places in terms of the landscape, in terms of politics, but what they all have in common is that good infrastructure investments are making them better off.
There's been some debate as to whether the Inflation Reduction Act would actually decrease inflation. In fact, the Congressional Budget Office has said that it would have negligible effects on inflation in 2022 and could potentially reduce it slightly in 2023. Now, of course, the key aspect of this in regard to bringing inflation down is prescription drug costs, which have been inflated prior to this most recent crisis. So do you feel that branding is at all misleading given those facts?
Look, the problem with inflation, by definition, is that we're paying too much for a lot of important things. And this will directly mean we're paying less for a lot of important things, paying less for prescription drugs. Remember, most Americans, I mean, Democrats, Independents, and Republicans, have long believed that it is long past time to let Medicare negotiate the price of prescription drugs. I know every congressional Republican voted against it, but just among ordinary people, Republicans, Democrats, pretty much everybody thinks that's a good idea. We're finally doing it. This means lower costs on energy. So, economists can debate the technical definitions around inflation and how this relates to that. But to me, the most important thing you can do about inflation is make sure things we pay for are cheaper, including prescription drugs, including our energy bills, and even including electric vehicles, which have been criticized for being too expensive. Their price comes down thanks to this law, and no one doubts that the federal deficit will come down as well as a result of this law, which can only be good news for the economy in the long run.
As you're referring to there's a direct relationship between energy and transportation. I want to talk gas prices for a second. And the time period that I like to compare gas prices now to is 2019, the pre-pandemic time period. And even still, gas prices $1 higher than they were at that point in time in 2019 as compared to now. However, gas prices have considerably gone down. So let's start with where prices are at now versus several months ago. What has been done, if anything, by the administration that you view as having a direct impact on gas prices reducing?
So here are some of the things that I believe have helped. The president ordered a release from the oil reserve. That's something that was designed to help stabilize global oil prices, and I think it played a positive role. There was also flexibility on ethanol rules, which helped allow fuel to be blended in a different way, also having a beneficial effect on gas prices. Look, those things helped, but I think we all know that there are a lot of factors that go into gas prices, including things that happen thousands of miles away, like when a major oil-producing country like Russia decides to get into a war. This is exactly why we are trying to create more freedom for Americans from global petroleum markets by creating more options for different sources of energy. And that's something that this, another thing that this Inflation Reduction Act will do in addition to the climate benefits. And of course, it's one of the reasons we're trying to make it cheaper and easier for Americans who would like to get an electric vehicle to go ahead and have that option.
Do you believe that disincentives toward production and usage of oil and gas in this country has led to the increase in prices from 2019, that point that I set, to now?
Well, again, there are always huge fluctuations in oil and gas prices, right? Like one of the last periods we saw, in fact, I think the only recent period we saw gas prices at something like this level is actually during the Bush administration. So these things tend to go up and down because of all the different factors in the global oil market. Obviously, our country's had a policy of huge amounts of taxpayer-funded subsidies for the oil and gas industry. What we're trying to do right now is have a smarter energy policy that prepares us for the future so that one day American drivers don't even have to worry about this kind of thing. And that's part of the benefit of having different kinds of energy for our vehicles and having good options for things like transit, which we're also trying to invest in, better trains and transit for people so that you don't always have to be dependent on burning gas to get to where you're going.
Obviously, you don't have much control over things in retrospect, but a lot of folks have looked at this particular environment right now and said, now is the time that I'd like to have an electric vehicle, or at least have that option, and have run into issues, as you're referencing before, in regard to, the affordability piece with electric vehicles, and also concerns, whether real or not, about having enough charging stations, or the ability to get from point A to point B. So two pieces on that. Number one, do you feel that opportunities were missed in the past to have us ready for a electric vehicle platform at this point in time? And B, how long do you envision before electric vehicles are, quote unquote, affordable for individuals, and this infrastructure that is getting obviously put into place via the bipartisan bill is ready for folks?
Yeah, let me take your second question first. We're actually getting pretty close to the point where, depending on the model, you can come out ahead with some of these vehicles. What will happen is your car payment will be higher than the equivalent gas model, but your fuel bill will be lower and you'll have less maintenance. We're getting close. It really depends on the vehicle, but for the most part, we're not quite there yet. I do think that's going to happen within a few short years. As to the broader question, you're right that right now our auto companies can't make these electric vehicles fast enough. They're more and more in demand, and that's one of the reasons why we have a bunch of different legislative priorities moving at the same time, including this CHIPS and Science Act that's helping with things like semiconductors that were in a real shortage that was holding back the production of these vehicles. But one thing that is really remarkable is to see how industry is adapting and moving to create and prepare more of this, and importantly, to do more of it onshore. Right? I'm not wild about the idea of needing to get some of the components for these batteries, for example, from countries that are not friendly to democracy or not friendly to the U.S. So we're working to bring more of that onshore and set up these automakers for success, whether we're talking about the big three in Detroit that are moving to EVs in a big way, or these newer companies, the Teslas and the other companies that didn't exist 10 or 20 years ago. Now, would we be in a different place if we'd been doing EVs all along? Sure. I mean, there was a move to do this in the 90s, and it got killed. I come from South Bend, home of Studebaker. The first Studebakers in 1903, 1904, those were electric. And, obviously the auto industry moved in a different direction for the 20th century. Now it's time to talk about the right direction for the 21st and make sure that we're ready.
Final thing in conclusion here, I want to ask a little about the airline industry. Obviously, it's a major sector in Manchester. We're located with Manchester-Boston Regional Airport, and there's been a lot of concern about flight cancellations, significant workforce issues within that industry. What's your upshot there, and what are some of the solutions to problems ailing the industry?
So we've seen a huge amount of frustration. I've experienced it myself. As you can imagine, I'm somebody who flies a lot, and so many of us have experienced delays, cancellations, and poor customer service where you get stuck somewhere and then they tell you it's 8 hours before you can get somebody on the phone. We have been pushing the airlines with several strategies at the same time. One, enforcement actions when they're not complying with the rules about things like refunds that they owe passengers. Two, developing new rules to expand passenger rights. And then three, encouraging them to go over and above the legal floor of just following the rules and following the law to compete on how they take care of customers. And we're making some new information available so there's some transparency about what the different airlines do for their customers that'll help you make a decision when you're getting ready to book a flight. I will say they've taken a number of steps that I think helped, especially since I got them together early in the summer when we saw these unacceptable levels of cancellations and delays. I've seen them increase pay for pilots, which is definitely one of the biggest issues that is getting in the way of their ability to serve some of the routes that they sell or accommodate a delay. So they've increased pay. They've thinned out their schedules to be more realistic. That's a positive step too. But they need to do more. Look, we're glad that the demand is back. It's great news that after a couple of years later on from a phase when we were wondering if the airlines would even survive, now you got tons of people with the income and the desire to get back in the air. But now we got to make sure the airlines are actually ready for that. And we're going to use all the tools in our toolkit, carrots and sticks. Work collaboratively where we can on the operational side, but also really push them on the customer service side to make sure they're doing the right thing.
Secretary Buttigieg, as always, great to talk with you and look forward to catching up again soon.